35mm f1.2 Sigma, very nice. 35mm f1.4 Sony Zeiss, very nice. It's Throwback Thursday. Welcome back to Throwback Thursday, where we take a slightly closer look at some of the more interesting items in our ever-growing Park Cameras used department. This week, we're doing something slightly different to what we've done in the past. You know, we often talk about prime lenses under £250, or a camera and lens setup for under £500, and different things like that. But this week, we're taking a look at some lenses that are a little bit higher in quality, both image quality, actual design and build and stuff like that. Because sometimes you get to a point with photography where actually you're ready to really step up and you want to get a really nice lens. And a really nice lens is something that can stay with you, you know, for years and years, much longer than a camera body, because where a camera body is going to get upgraded probably quite quickly. You know, 3 years with a camera body these days, everything can change. But with a really good lens, you know, that's going to last you for absolutely ages, and in some cases, an absolute lifetime. Because when a lens is done right, when a lens is created really well, oh, it's just, you know, absolutely fantastic. So we've got 35mm lenses. That's what we're going to talk about this week. I've got two lenses here. Of course, there's loads of really nice 35mm lenses, but two of my absolute favorite that I've been using recently, and specifically, these are E-mount lenses because that's what I've been shooting on recently. We have got the Sony Zeiss 35mm f1.4 lens, which is absolutely lovely. It gives you such beautiful results. It's a lovely, lovely lens. And we've got this, which is a little bit bigger. You can see, whoo, but I love this lens. This is the Sigma 35mm f1.2 lens. Oh, I did a full review on this lens, which I'll link down in the description. Of course, as well, it's probably worth noting, I'll pop a link to both of these lenses down in the description as well. So you can go and check that out. They're both from our used department. So you can get them, you know, obviously at a significantly reduced rate, which is great news for anyone looking to get a really nice 35mm lens. So let's talk a little bit about 35mm as a focal length. You know, why is that so exciting? Well, it's generally considered to be the closest focal length to the actual view of the human eye, to what you can actually see, which means that they are fantastic for a huge number of different uses. Whether you want to go for portraiture, you know, it's wide enough to go for landscape. It's great for things like street photography because you're able to get a human eye view, essentially, of what's going on around you. They are fantastic. They are fantastic for kind of everyday use. I almost always have a 35mm in my bag because it's just so handy. In fact, I think I'm actually shooting a 24-70 right now, but I think it might even be set to 35mm because it's just such a useful focal length to use. And of course, if you shoot video, 35mm is what you want. You know, 35mm, 40mm, around that kind of level is going to be absolutely fantastic for most video situations. You know, a lot of films are shot around that kind of focal length as well because it gives you the kind of human eye view. So it's a very natural looking focal length. And it means that 35mm lenses are an absolute staple of any photographer, any videographer. They allow you to do so much. And with these, of course, these are both very fast lenses, f1.4, f1.2. It allows you to get a nice shallow depth of field if you want to as well. You know, like I mentioned before, you can absolutely use these for portraiture, so you can pull back and get a wider portrait, more of an environmental portrait, and maybe have a slightly deeper depth of field. But of course, you can just get in a little bit closer and get some really beautiful bokeh in your image, especially, I mean, this one, for example, oh, this gives you some beautiful looking bokeh at f1.2. It's a lovely, lovely lens. And of course, because they're Sony E-mount, you can use them with the eye autofocus as well, which just allows you to nail the portrait. So it's just absolutely ideal. But let's get into kind of the ins and outs of what we're talking about with these, specifically these two lenses. Obviously, this is an f1.2 lens versus this Sony lens, which is f1.4. Obviously, it's a little bit faster. Actually, it doesn't sound like a huge difference, f1.2 and f1.4, but actually f1.2 does give you quite a significant amount of extra light coming into the lens. And in terms of bokeh, in terms of the look of the photo, it does make it does make a pretty decent difference. However, it does mean that the lens is quite a bit bigger, both in terms of the actual kind of height of the lens there, the length, and the width. It's a much bigger lens to hold, and it's a little bit heavier. It's just quite a bit heavier to hold as well, which means that on the front of the A7 III, the A7R4, they're the two cameras I've been using, this does feel a little bit more front heavy. You know, is a little bit less well balanced than, for example, this lens, which balances really nicely on the front of the two cameras. Now, for me personally, that's never been an issue, but it is worth being aware of, you know, especially if you want to be shooting with it all day, that is something that you need to just take into consideration. It's also something that as a videographer, I would consider, because if I want to use my camera on a gimbal, having a heavier lens on the front is going to make balancing probably just a little bit more tricky compared to something like this. Now this lens, of course, the Sony f1.4 lens, is a bit lighter weight. It is a little bit smaller, which means it balances on the cameras like the A7 III, the A7R4, or of course, if you want to use a crop sensor camera, it just balances a little bit nicer on the front. It's not so front heavy. It's worth mentioning as well, both lenses have an aperture ring, which I really, really like. And I think they both have a declicker as well. The Sony Zeiss 35 certainly does. It certainly does. The Sigma does as well. So you get a nice smooth aperture ring on there if you want to. So for videographers, you can have that obviously with no sound. I like the tactile feel of those clicks though, you know, that's really nice. Now in terms of the actual kind of feel of the lenses, apart from the weight and the size, they both feel like great quality lenses. Probably what you'd expect, to be honest, because they are a higher price item, but you know, they just feel good. They feel robust, well made. You know, they've got things like the aperture ring, the manual focus ring. It's really nicely weighted on both. I know that sounds silly, but it's really nice. It's very, very nice. That is nice. If you want to use manual focus again as a videographer or a photographer, it just feels good on these lenses. Now let's talk a little bit about image quality from these two lenses. Now I've used both of these lenses a lot in the past because they're both just really, really lovely lenses. Since this one actually came out, it has been one of my favorite 35mm lenses. This is a Sigma to actually use, but you're gonna get fantastic results from both lenses here. Now, whether you want to do landscape, you want to do portrait, you want to do street, you know, this is going to be a little less discreet for street than this is. This is obviously a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to kind of hide away a little bit, but you're going to get some really fantastic results, and the same for video as well. They're both able to deliver absolutely. But there are some slight differences, and I'll be putting up some photos from both lenses. But let's have a look at the difference between f1.4 and f1.2, because f1.4, that's really fast, you know? That is nice and fast, and it's going to give you some lovely, beautiful bokeh, some great low light performance and stuff like that. But f1.2 doesn't sound a lot faster, but actually it is quite a massive difference. Let's take a look at the difference. So this shot is taken at f1.4 on the Sony Zeiss 35mm. This shot is taken at f1.4 on the Sigma 35mm. And then this shot is taken at f1.2 on the Sigma 35mm. So let's look at the difference between f1.4, which is this, and then f1.2, which is this. You can see there is actually enough of a difference. It does make enough of a difference. Now, for everyday use, for general use, are you gonna notice that? Maybe not, you know, maybe not. F1.2 is very, very fast, and that can give you a very shallow depth of field. So it's not always gonna be an applicable aperture to use, because it's not actually always a usable thing. F1.4 just gives you a little bit more room for error, whereas f1.2, it needs to be spot on. But you can see there is a bit of a difference. Now, in terms of actual image quality itself, they're both really sharp. They both look fantastic. There's just a great look to both these lenses. So it's difficult to say that one is better than the other, but certainly the Sigma gives you a little bit more, with that f1.2, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Ultimately though, as a photographer or a videographer, if you're looking to get a 35mm, which absolutely I think is a staple focal length for all kinds of different things, no matter what genre you're into, this is a focal length that is just necessary. It just comes up so much. I think you could do a lot worse than either of these lenses. I think both of these lenses offer so much they're just a fantastic option. But the one thing you would probably look to consider, obviously slightly faster aperture, but smaller and lighter weight. That's really what it would come down to for me, and that is a personal choice. Do you want or need that f1.2 aperture, in which case, absolutely. Or is it more important for you to have a slightly smaller, lighter weight lens that's maybe easier to travel around with, maybe easier to actually shoot with handheld all the time and be running around? That's what it comes down to. Otherwise, these are both top 35mm lenses. Now, of course, I'll pop links to both of those, like I say, down in the description so you can go and check them both out on our used department. Of course, I'll pop a link to the actual full used department as well, so you can check that out for yourself, because there's loads of stuff in there. You know, no matter what you shoot, we've got loads and loads of stuff to look at, so it's definitely worth having a look. If you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe as well, because we've got new tutorials, we've got new reviews, new kind of Throwback Thursday, looking at cool stuff videos. But of course, I will see you in the next video. And as always, thanks for watching.